Hello and welcome to Bud's RPG Review, where I give my thoughts on role-playing games, card games and board games. Welcome to the third in a series of Redux reviews, where I revisit my earlier videos that were recorded a few years ago on substandard equipment and with less in the way of production values. The aim of these reviews is to enable me to tighten and expand the writing, fleshing it out with further insight where appropriate, and to produce something of superior video and audio quality to the original. Today's review is 2016's The Things We Leave Behind for Call of Cthulhu 7th edition by Stygian Fox. Okay, first a bit of history. The Things We Leave Behind was successfully funded via Kickstarter in 2015 and later released in print and PDF format in 2016. It is a 138-page collection of 6 modern-day scenarios taking their inspiration from the likes of Delta Green, Fargo, Blood Simple and True Detective that take a mature look at the horror of human nature and its ability to be as equally disturbing as the mythos. The book went on to win an Emmy Award in 2017. Okay, first to the cover. Here we have a design by Stephanie McAlee, which does an excellent job of setting the mood for what lies within. We also have a red-banded "For Mature Gamers" warning. Okay, to the inside. First up we have a section called Introduction and Musings on Trigger Warnings by Jeff Moeller. Here he has a lot of interesting things to say on the subject, but I have to say that having read it a number of times and even now I still can't tell whether it's simply saying this is a set of adventures that go into dark places so consider this your trigger warning, or is saying this is a book for Call of Cthulhu that is intended for mature audiences so you shouldn't really need a trigger warning, or even a combination of the two. There'll be spoilers from this point on, so stop watching now if you intend to play this. The first adventure up is Ladybug Ladybug Fly Away Home by Jeff Moeller. The scenario is about the abduction of 5-year-old Regina Balfour. Regina has contended with a serious health condition and was kidnapped in broad daylight in a busy store by a man who first tased her mother, then snatched the child and passed her to a co-abductor outside. The man then proceeded to go back inside the store and commit suicide. Over the course of the scenario, the investigators uncover some strange truths. The suicidal abductor is a retired Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms agent called George Lewiston, who ultimately discover was investigating an extreme Christian group called the Church of the Passover Angel, which is headed by Regina's parents. The scenario is investigation heavy, and during the course of events they can discover that George's co-conspirator is a woman called Lindsay Peel. It becomes apparent, should the investigators dig deeply enough, that George and Lindsay have a definite reason for kidnapping Regina, as George had infiltrated the Church of the Passover Angel and has discovered that they intend on sacrificing Regina in a week's time, in a manner similar to how Abraham in the Bible was asked to the Passover Angel, who, unbeknownst to them, is an aspect of Nyarlathotep. This is all in order to avoid the supposed wrath of God. Should the investigators succeed in tracking Lindsay down and rescuing Regina, she's returned to her parents who can then go ahead with the ceremony. Should they succeed, the knock-on effect could be devastating on a global scale. The art in this section is a bit of a mixed bag, varying from average to excellent. The second scenario is Forget Me Not by Brian M. Sammons. It begins with the investigators waking up battered and bruised inside a TV production van in a ditch in the dark. They have no idea who each other is or how they got there, and the scenario drip feeds them information as and when they look for it. They will eventually realise that they are a TV production crew for a paranormal TV show called The Supernatural Files. Though the players don't know it, what has actually happened is that during a paranormal investigation of a local haunt called the Cooper House, they were tricked into coming face to face with Ihort, who offered them a bargain for their lives that they took. Ihort then proceeded to wipe their memories and impregnate them with its brood. The investigation goes not only into why they are where they are and how they got there, but also them finding out who they themselves are. They start off with a phobia due to being unhinged by encountering Ihort, and they have to piece together the clues to find out what is really going on and who is behind their unfortunate meeting. A lot of the investigation centres around the Cooper House and its past history, and there's a chance of the characters getting out of it alive, but they have a time limit before Ihort's brood burst forth from them. If they follow the clues, it leads to an estate agent, Vanessa Volker, who is behind their misfortune, and they need to find a ritual called Bulk Brood, which is the only thing that can save them. The third scenario is Roots by Simon Brake. Roots is centred around the disappearance of Karen, an 18-year-old adoptee, who suddenly decided to go off and visit her birth mother. The investigators are called in to find Karen after she vanishes on a camping trip. A letter was found amongst her belongings addressed from the nearby town of Gevelon and purports to be from her birth mother, Joy. Unknown to the investigators, the town of Gevelon is the front for a cult of Shub-Niggurath that is mostly populated by females. The men of the town live in the woods as strange satyr-like creatures called Wild Ones. The investigators can follow the clues and end up at Gevelon and can encounter Father Albury who can assist them, Alex Steele, the deputy sheriff, and Joy, who actually isn't Karen's mother but wrote to her to have her return to Gevelon and join them. The investigators can explore the local area and should eventually encounter the Wild Ones, who are as horrific as they are strange. They can eventually find Karen, who is on her way to becoming a wild woman, and can even be made into Wild Ones themselves. The adventure should ideally culminate in them finding the tree, which is the centre of the Wild Ones' worship. The scenario is fairly open-ended in that they can end up being made into Wild Ones, rescued, or even decide that isn't worth their trouble. The fourth scenario is Hell in Texas by Scott Dorward. The evangelical church in the East Texas town of Leyland, in an attempt to free itself from weak finances, has set up a Halloween hell house. The local pastor, Ted Weaver, has bought the house, a reputed haunted place, and transformed the rooms into scenarios centred around sins that will send you to hell: school shootings, drug addiction, abortion, etc., with the hope that at the end anyone who passes through the rooms is scared enough to join the church. The cause of the so-called haunting is a loigor that is trapped underneath the house sleeping, but that is woken due to the buzz of activity. The party are called in to investigate when a local girl, Kelly Landrum, commits suicide in one of the rooms of the house, but not before scrawling a disturbing message on one of the walls. The house in question, the Angerstein house, has a tragic history with previous occupants being involved in murders and suicides. Kelly's suicide is strange in that she had recently come out of recovery from drug addiction and was turning her life around. She had volunteered at the church as part of her rehabilitation and was doing well. Pastor Ted Weaver is desperate that the house should be ready for Halloween, as his church is in serious financial difficulty, so he's leaned upon his brother, Police Chief Daniel Weaver, to rush the investigation through. If the Hell House is investigated, they can meet Bradley Kohler, an LGBTQ protester of the house, who has fallen under the thrall of the loigor. Strange things will happen in the house throughout the investigation that will culminate in one of the volunteers, Kevin Cho, swapping out his blanks in the school shooting room for real ones and going on a rampage of murder, all influenced by the loigor, who requires the vortex of death to be free. The scenario culminates in the injured loigor being freed and possibly fighting the investigators, although the main aim here is to stop Kevin Cho. The fifth scenario is The Night Season by Jeff Moeller. In this scenario, the investigators come across a 13-year-old suicide with a strange suicide note. The victim is Robert Horn, a teenage jock, ladies' man and bully who's been found in his room stabbed to death with the doors and windows locked from the inside, with a strange etched dagger being the method of execution, and the main question being why would a young man with so much supposedly going for him commit suicide? Experienced investigators can realise early on that the Dreamlands is somehow involved. The more the investigators look into this, the more strange things start to happen around them, as people and things from an old niche sci-fi series, The City in the Clouds, are seemingly conjured from thin air. Eventually, the investigators find the culprit behind the strange occurrences, Gates Shelley Ivory, a 30-year-old woman who has functional problems in society and who is obsessed with sci-fi culture, described as being curvy and alluring, if not altogether fully connected with reality. They meet Shelley's mother, Pamela Ivory, who while pregnant had drunk moon wine which had affected her unborn child. Shelley at one point draws the investigators into the Dreamlands where they find the soul of Robert Horn trapped there by Shelley. Robert had once lived next door to Shelley and her mother, and 13 years ago, as a dare, crept into Shelley's room and seduced her. She had become obsessed with him and trapped him in the Dreamlands, where she is incredibly powerful. The scenario culminates with the investigators meeting Shelley in the Dreamlands, where she is known as Queen Gates, and escaping. The final scenario is Intimate Encounters by Oscar Rios. The scenario is roughly based on an episode of Kolchak the Night Stalker series called They Have Been, They Are, They Will Be. It involves the investigators tracking a potential serial killer called the Lipo Killer, as all of the victims are found completely drained of fat. The killer is actually something from another dimension called the Dark Matter Entity, which was accidentally summoned by pure luck as a result of chemicals, electricity and ley lines, and that just wants to return to its own dimension. It possesses a repairman that is involved in the accidental summoning and proceeds to infect the internet with its vast intellect while slowly draining up all of the man's fat to burn as energy to power itself. Realising that these mortal shells don't last very long, the Dark Matter Entity is arranged a few times to meet people through a dating website called Intimate Encounters, and upon actually meeting them jumps bodies leaving the drained husk behind. Due to the Dark Matter Entity infecting the internet, it can see all the online searches relating to itself and constantly sabotages all attempts to find it, including causing computers, phones and the like to suddenly burst into flame or die. As the investigators put the pieces together, they can find out about the repairman who was the first victim and track down where the creature was summoned. The creature has been building a machine to take it back where it came from, and ultimately the investigators need to track it down and shut down the machine before it levels half of the city with a massive explosion as it is activated. Looking back on it, The Things We Leave Behind really was and is an excellent piece of work. The book is a nice solid hardback, though I still think that the art is occasionally sketchy, with descriptions sometimes not matching the drawing of a person, while other times it's excellent. The maps throughout are also very good. I originally approached all 6 scenarios not as modern-day Cthulhu adventures, but as potential Delta Green ones, as that seemed at the time to be the format best suited to modern-day investigation, and I continue to believe it was the right one, as I've had lots of feedback from people saying that they played these scenarios using the Delta Green system and it worked wonderfully. Ladybug Fly Away Home is excellent and remains a perfect fit into the Delta Green world. The second scenario, Forget-Me-Not, was the weak link amongst them, as not only does it make vast assumptions on behalf of the players, but also would fit poorly into a campaign as everybody in it is pre-existing and criminally no pre-gen characters are provided. The third scenario, Roots, has a very Wicker Man feel to it that I found endearing, and Hell in Texas seemed like a decent idea that wasn't very well executed, and I felt it shared more than a passing resemblance to Chaosium's Cold Harvest, although I did feel that both would make a very easy Delta Green conversion. The Night Season could, if played the right way, provide some actual comic relief for players, but not everyone is fond of the Dreamlands, myself included, so I felt it was quite niche, although the character of Shelley Ivory was an interesting one. The final scenario, Intimate Encounters, seemed to follow the more traditional Call of Cthulhu route and would fit into the more modern day method of online investigation much better. I also liked that throughout modern day things are used as part of the investigating, things like Gmail, Reddit and Facebook. The dark underbelly of America's modern day society is superbly explored and exposed, and mythos threats at times seem almost secondary to the true horror of humanity on display, be that blind faith, foul tradition, or throwaway sexual propensities. That's not to say that the things we leave behind is for everyone. Things like child abduction and suicide are understandably very uncomfortable for some people, but I feel that they are dealt with well, and to be fair, there are plenty of warnings before the book begins. Stygian Fox can remain very proud of their first expedition into the world of Call of Cthulhu. I originally gave this book an 8 out of 10, but after the incredibly positive feedback that I've received on the back of my original review, I chose to revise my score and give it a well-deserved 9 out of 10. If you enjoyed this review, please make sure to hit the thumbs up, subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos. Also, if you're interested in buying this product, I'll put some links below. Lastly, if you like what I produce here, then maybe think about supporting me on Patreon. Bud out.